All right. We are here this afternoon with Robert Patton-Spruill. Am I pronouncing that correctly, sir?
Oh yeah, that was great.
Right on. Excellent. Well, it's good to have you here. Let's get just a brief run over your credentials. If you want to share anything about yourself, what your current projects are, that kind of thing, right off the top, so people have an idea of like where you're coming from.
Sure, no problem. I'm all right. Let's see. I am a retired college professor. I taught film and television directing for many years. I started out as a filmmaker. I sold my first film to Harvey Weinstein in 1997, and that's how my career began. I then took the money that I made in film and television, and I became a landlord. And I became a hated, brutal landlord. Um, I eventually built that company large enough that I could retire from teaching, and I ran that for many years. I think at my height, I had 120 apartments, 18 stores, storage unit complex, and some other stuff, and like 10 lake house Airbnbs. I have since sold everything and just own the lake houses, et cetera, et cetera. I am a capitalist. However, I was raised by communist socialists. So, and I was probably a socialist till I was 40 years old. I'm 56 years old now. So I believe I understand that thinking. And a lot of things in my life happened that made me believe that, in socialism but I think over time I also changed my opinions developed and changed partially through being a landlord, but also partially from deciding to study economics. And so in 2011, I read Piketty's giant book, Capital in the 21st Century. And it was a bit of an awakening for me, and it inspired me to go and study economics. So I watched like every free course Yale had, every free course MIT had. And then I just began to be a voracious reader of economics. And then last year, I joined Glenn Lowry's podcast. Glenn Lowry's a noted economist that also deals with race issues as well. I am African American. I'm technically, genetically, I'm 50% Lithuanian Jew. However, I have no Jewish culture in me because I was raised entirely in the African American community. I mean, I do understand some Jewish stuff because I went to school with those people, but I'm not that. That's not actually who I am as an individual. So I'm a filmmaker, writer, creator guy, and former socialist. So I hope that
something of a polymath.
Yeah, maybe autodidact. I don't know.
I like that.
Crazy artist, storyteller. I think to sum it all up, I'm a storyteller.
Okay. Well, I think on the theme of storytelling, the story that I kind of wanted to kind of discuss with you is the story of Trump and how we got to this point. And my contention is that this is not an aberration from the norm in form, that it is in magnitude. It's different in magnitude, but the austerity policies, the culture war nonsense, and the rabid militarism is not an aberration from the typical Republican presidency. And so that is where I'm saying that Trump is not an aberration, that it's kind of what you get when you make the choices that have been made under the neoliberal consensus post-Reagan. So what would you say to that?
Well, I mean, you have a point. I mean, there's no question that Republicans are generally warmongers, but the Democrats are too, in my opinion. I'm actually a libertarian, is where I end up, where I found myself lining up mostly with. But I'll caucus with the different people depending on the specific issue. But, it's really about authoritarianism, right? So are we saying, I think the aberration part is that Trump feels more authoritarian than the previous Republicans. We remember during the first Gulf War, Colin Powell going to the UN, laying out a bullshit case that wasn't true, that made a coalition of the willing to go and destroy the Iraqi government and the people of Iraq. This guy, he just kind of does it. I mean, I've never seen anybody who go out there and, capture a sitting president and kill 50 bodyguards in the process of Cubans. I mean, he has definitely taken it to a new level. Previous presidents, I'm thinking of Johnson, the Democrat, he needed the Gulf of Tonkin incident to pursue his war. This effing guy, he'll just go right after it. But I think that he's a little different in that I believe that my wife's dad was a New York landlord. I think this guy's a New York landlord retired to Florida that just thinks if he's right, that's that, and that's the way it is. And I'm going to do what I damn well please. I don't see like a grand plot behind it. I just think that somehow Grandpa got in charge, and we let a New York landlord in charge, and he doesn't respect any rules that we normally might respect. But Aberration, maybe a little bit as an authoritarian, yeah. But those people will, go to war all the time, and they will definitely waste our treasury money as well. So I'm not sure if, I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, that's a good jumping off point. That gives me a good frame of reference for where you're coming at it, especially understanding that you're coming at it from a frame of like authoritarianism versus like liberty and that kind of like dichotomy. Right. So I've got a couple thoughts on that, but initially I would push back on it's not a plot per se. I'm not saying there's some machinations behind the scenes that put him in charge. I'm not saying he's a Manchurian candidate or anything like that. I think there's room for that argument maybe, but
one of your guys just posted, the Heritage Foundation, and that's kind of right. There's no question that those
the Powell memorandum set up a whole lot of stuff.
Down. Yeah. And said, this is what you're doing, Grampy.
Right. So they were, and that's where I get back to this is kind of the natural evolution. If you look at the unitary executive theory that Nixon started trying to run, that playbook that W also furthered under his administration, the first and second terms, especially given the war that you cite, I think this is a natural outgrowth of all that. The confluence of all these forces at the same time. You got the Powell Memorandum in the 70s, setting up the war between professors and academia and the media and, kind of the conservative business class, which interestingly, you straddle the line between both of those. So it's interesting to have your perspective on this. I think it's pretty easy to see that if it wasn't Trump, it'd be somebody else. Maybe the aberration is in how wild and scattershot he is. I'll give you that. It's definitely different, the way that he goes about things. But it's kind of hard to deny, just from my perspective, how we got here, given, all of that stuff, the unitary executive theory, the concerted effort to, destroy anything left of center on the part of the business class to protect property relationships. I just think that this is kind of what you get when you make those decisions.
Well, I mean, don't you think that really, we really look at it, capitalists, right? Let's just say the run-of-the-mill capitalists. So like me in the economic scale, I'm probably top 2%, top 3%. I was a 1%er. I backed out of that because I wanted an easier life. But we want stability. We don't we like knowing what the interest rate's going to be. We like knowing where the markets are. We don't really war doesn't really help most capitalists. Now, if you're someone that has most of your portfolio in General Dynamics or Raytheon or a military industrial company, sure, you're like, that's great. I mean, I know a guy that co-owns an ammunition company, and when the Ukraine war started, he was off on hunting trips. So, reality is, but most capitalists, most of us, and I'm saying us, we want stability. We don't want war and crisis. Closing the Strait of Hormuz is a disaster, because that's going to trickle down through our global capitalist system in a very negative way. We don't like that shit. So if the factories in Vietnam have to go to 4-day weeks, then that means some guy who's got a contract to make 20,000 t-shirts is getting screwed. So like, as a capitalist, an American capitalist who's hiring foreign labor to make their product, that has a very downstream negative effect in general. So I don't want to say capitalists are for war or disruption. We're for stability, like, the vast majority of, and authoritarianism helps sometimes in keeping the world stable, sometimes. However, in a country like ours, it really divides us because of, if we actually look to our guiding principles, like the Declaration of Independence, for example, that's a libertarian document if I ever read one. And it's absolutely against authoritarianism. It's declaring us independent of a king. So is it a shift away from a republican form of government, a republic, not republican, but
Right.
a republic, small r thing,
Yeah.
or are we seeing something else? I think potentially this is more of a classic societal thing, where as societies, when we get nervous as a people, we end up creating a strong man, whether his name is Xerxes, or whether it's a pharaoh, whether it's a king, whether it's an elected national socialist in Germany or an elected fascist in Italy. We kind of do that as a people. Like, I spent a few months in Africa, and I got to be in the highlands with the Kikuyu tribe, and you could see that, like, they'd have in their small villages and family compounds, like, if shit got bad, like, they'd kind of assign a war leader. The Seneca were run by grandmothers and mothers, and when the shit got bad, they assign a war leader. Like, there's authoritarianism is something that happens all the time in human history. Capitalism, agrarianism, mercantilism, whatever fucking thing we're under, an authoritarian dickhead is often hired by the people to do dickish shit,
Okay. I think
So
that's a fair observation. I would, in the example specifically in Italy, I would point to collaboration with corporatists. And I mean, they were elected. The fascist party was elected to power, yes, but it did not gain that power without collaboration from liberal capitalists and corporatists that wanted the maintenance of private property. It was a reactionary movement to prevent socialization of the economy. Yes.
Well, no capitalist wants to socialize the property,
right? And so when push comes to shove, they pick authoritarianism over socially owned.
Sometimes, but there are times where you get a Castro who's, some human societies get a Castro. You get a Nyeri in Tanzania. This isn't, there are times where, I mean, look at Julius Caesar. He was a popularist. He ended up getting in trouble because he was trying to give the people state-owned land. That was what the whole fight happened. Like, but he's still an authoritarian, but he was the authoritarian of the
backlash
people.
Comes when you try to spread the wealth around to a majority of people instead of keeping it concentrated in a few hands. I mean, your Caesar point is directly lending itself credit to that, wouldn't it? I mean, he tries to spread some of the wealth to a broader swath of the population. The backlash comes from the landed elite, and he ends up with a knife in his back at Tu Brute.
Well, first he killed most of them, and then he forgave them, and then they stabbed him in the back.
Right. Yeah.
Let's just
the broad swath of it, though. Like the tension between people having enough and private property relations being maintained for profitability concerns. I think that's the central crux of where this authoritarian back and forth comes from. And I think trying to escape that cycle cannot happen under a capitalist system. I think there are ways to do it wherein, obviously it's still going to, you would still have to participate in a market economy. That's just the way the world works. But I think there are better ways to organize society wherein we don't have to rely on authoritarianism for stability.
Absolutely. I'm not going to disagree that we are required to have authoritarianism for stability. And in fact, I would argue with you that authoritarianism only creates stability for short periods of time, under 10 years, really. Like, well, unless it's a monarchy, and that's a different sort of thing. But certainly in a republic like our own, authoritarianism only works for a little while. If we look at what happened when Lincoln was president, we look at what happened when FDR was president, we can't deny that they were complete authoritarians in our past and in our history.
FDR definitely had an authoritarian streak, but if you look at the compromises that FDR made between, capitalism collapsing and, a more Marxist line of approach, I mean, he had things like a lot of social programs, socialized parts of the economy that stabilized capitalism for a time. Then you hit the 70s, you hit stagflation, and that crisis leads us into a Reagan, who I think you could say was more of a cultural authoritarian. He may not have been as ham-fisted as our current administration, but I think there was a pretty big strain of authoritarianism throughout the Reagan years. I
mean, what is a president other than your ultimate singular authority? Let's just be real.
People. A servant of the people is what he should be, he or she.
Well, in our republic, he's set up to execute the orders of our Congress.
Okay.
That's his job. That's in the way we set up our republic.
Right.
So you cannot say that, well, a president doesn't act authoritarian. That's their fucking job, is to be an authoritarian. Now, what we like them to do is we like them to be cool. It's kind of, we don't want them to be dicks,
right.
But that's what we elect them to do. And if you look at Trump, he was elected to, deal with immigration and illegal immigrants. He was elected to restore our economy and to rebuild our factory systems and agriculture based on citizen labor and not from immigrant labor. That's what the guy was elected to do.
But how much of that has he done?
Well, there's the problem for those people. Reality is, I think he lost all credibility even with them by this Iran war. I think a bunch of them are going to have to, look at themselves here for a second and be like, is this what we asked for? But I've seen it here. Like, I live in a pretty rural white American town. And during the immigration stuff, when the Alex Preddy person and the other woman were murdered, their general opinion was, well, they deserved it. They got in the way of the police. And my opinion was like, dude, we don't, our troops are not supposed to kill us. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And we should have the right to tell, I believe we all should have the right to curse out any public employee or anybody. Like, that's an American right. But to say like, dude, a president's acting authoritarian, it's, it's just kind of, that to me is like, dude, well, we're a republic. That's literally what they're supposed to do.
Well, okay. So you pointed out correctly that they're supposed to execute the will of Congress. Trump is acting primarily through executive order. Mm-hmm. So I'll give you the general authoritarianism being a theme under the executive branch. They're a position of authority. It's a hierarchical position. Absolutely with you on that.
Yeah.
But I think where the magnitude argument that I'm making comes into play is the following in the unitary executive theory tradition that that really spearheaded under Nixon. The madman strategy that Trump's trying in Iran, he's rerunning Nixon's playbook there as well. Similarly disastrous. And
arguably worse. But
oh, yeah.
Arguably worse.
I would, yeah, just from a global perspective, absolutely.
Well, no, about the money. I'm the capitalist here on this show.
Right.
It's arguably worse for the money.
Worse for the money than
the capital is a problem.
Well, yeah, you're strangleholding what 1/5 of the world's liquid petroleum and liquid natural gas.
Yeah, I mean, you've got that, but that affects all the people we trade with to get our goods and services with. It affects our prices, etc. The guy is not making the general capitalist happy at all. The whole tariff brouhaha. But there's another thing, like the Supreme Court cut that thing down and Trump isn't executive ordering it back. Right. So is Trump really outside the box totally? No, we can't say that he is, because they're about to give back $200 billion that they stole from the American capitalists to redo our
pass on to the consumers, and the consumers aren't seeing a dime of that back, are they?
No. But I mean, in theory, individual capital corporations and individuals will be like, here's a tariff sale, or because some capitalists are aware of the gouging. I mean, they won't be able to accept it as a windfall without some sort of consumer pushback.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
I think the gutting of the NLRB and the FTC under the second Trump administration, he came in, he cleaned house, got rid of anyone that was just trying to do their job even keeled, and put in yes men and party sycophants. I think that's pretty obvious. I think that's going to prevent any of that getting from the capitalists, who will kind of get back what they see as something that they deserve back. Tariffs that really screwed up everything for everybody. I mean, farmers, average consumer, just capitalists. The whole system was destabilized. But the people that bear the brunt of that are the people doing wage work, the people buying consumer goods, necessities, and things like that. They don't get any kind of stipend. They're not going to get any relief in this tariff payback, right? Capitalists get bailed out, but the people don't get bailed out. And that I think is where we get back to it's always for the benefit of people that are already positioned in a position to where they have more resources. Like any of that redistributive stuff that would help the average person, that would create a more stable economy, that would allow social democracy to function and be stable. And that's not necessarily what America's trying to do. We're not trying to do social democracy. I think that would be a step towards a more just and fair world. But I don't think that's stable and sustainable either, because you're going to have this capital backlash against 5-8% getting taken out in the form of a wealth tax, or higher income margins, like higher marginal tax rate, the sorts of things that in the period of the greatest growth in the American economy, the pre-neoliberal America, post-war pre-neoliberal America, we had much higher marginal tax rates, we had much more effective social programs, and that staved off some of the inequality that leads to instability. Yes?
What period was that?
So post World War II, up until the stagflation in the 70s and the neoliberal consensus following that. Obviously, it was stepped down over a period of years, but was that not a more stable, predictable economy just from a capitalist perspective, where we had kind of like a more broad base to things?
Well, I would argue that was the benefit of winning a giant war and destroying the German economy, all of your competitors. You destroyed your competitors. Of course, your economy is going to boom for 20 years. And then you lent them the money to rebuild their own factories. So it took them 20 years to catch up. And when does it catch up? 1970, 1972. I think that has very little to do with the tax rate, for sure. This is about bombing Berlin to dust, bombing Stuttgart to dust, bombing Tokyo, Hiroshima, Nagasaki. This has, I just think that's just you're.
So it's a correlational, not causal.
Yeah, I just don't see it. And then the other factor, and I think this is where. Oh, sorry about that.
No worries.
Sorry, I'll turn my phone off. All right. Excuse me one second. Brandon, can you hold my phone? If anyone calls back, shut them up.
The podcast.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Oh, it's all good. I understand.
I would say that just to go back, I feel like Marxist theory fails in two places. And the first place it fails is that it never contemplated what would happen when the consumers were also the workers. Because when that was written and that was identified, basically the workers were making locomotives and steel rails and stuff. There weren't a lot of consumer goods around. And it fails because the consumer actually is the person that sets the price. So I want to just circle into that.
Can you elaborate on that? Like how a consumer sets a price when it's a necessity that they have? Like, let's say bottled water, for example. Okay,
that's not a necessity.
But in a country with failing infrastructure, with unclean water that is not necessarily safe, like
I'd prefer if we just kept it to the United States, because that we both.
I'm talking about the United States, but like, so necessities: fuel to get around, food to eat, clothes to put on your back, housing. Okay, those are necessities. How does a consumer set the price for those?
All right, let's take fuel. So my brother, for example, he will go by every gas station in town and go to the one that has the best price.
Okay.
So he's deciding what the price of that should be.
Out of what's offered to him. He doesn't get to set the actual price.
But if it goes too high, then we won't use it.
Everyone will carpool. He'll just not use any gas until such time as it comes down to $2.50 a gallon.
Thus that's like a strike. That's striking against. And so basically what happens in the real world is that if the price of steak is too high, we'll buy chicken. If the price of chicken's too high, you'll buy pork feet to get your protein.
If the price of all is too high, you go hungry.
Come down. What's that?
If the price of all of it is too high, you go hungry, or you pick between that and medicine, or that and housing. Like,
yep. Well,
yeah,
yes,
an inherent problem with
very strong. No, well, we have a very strong social safety network.
Do we
running behind us? Yeah, we do.
Strong on what metric? Like, seriously,
I will. Strong in that. What we have in our country is the ability for most people to go and seek help, and they can get help either from our government and from our nonprofits. And you'll see that happens a lot. Now, I'll give you an example of this, and you're not going to believe this, but I was the landlord of a homeless shelter. So I protected. Yeah, I know it's the weirdest thing ever, but a nonprofit got together and they said, we need to rent a building to house homeless people. And I'm stupid enough to say, sure, I'm in. We'll try it. I will try to help in this way. But we have really, for example, in the state of New Hampshire, homelessness is effectively illegal. It's actually a choice. So any town, if you can't pay your rent, any town in New Hampshire is required by law to pay your rent for you, for example. That happens in commonwealths. So like Massachusetts, Virginia.
That does not happen in Virginia, sir. I live in Virginia. I know for a fact that doesn't happen in Virginia.
Commonwealths generally have stronger social safety nets than our other states. I'm just from my observation. I live in Massachusetts.
Maybe observationally. Speaking to Virginia, I can't speak experientially for anywhere but Virginia and Colorado. Colorado had a better social safety net. The wait for Section 8 housing, you have to be homeless for a period of months before you can get into a unit. People don't let go of those. And because of some federal legislation, I can't remember the exact name of the law. Forgive me for that. But there's only so much federally subsidized housing that is in stock. There's only so much stock. And it hasn't been expanded since what, the late 90s? And what
most American cities, you have your federally supported housing, you have your city supported housing, and most affordable apartments, something like 60%, are provided by mom and pop landlords.
Okay. I'm not saying that there's no function for that. I'm just saying that having that system, having a privatized housing system with no like social housing option, like just as a baseline, you want to get an apartment somewhere, you want to get publicly subsidized apartment, you can't just go in and get one. There's means testing, there's a wait list, there's all of these hoops you have to jump through. And when people are working 1, 2, maybe 3 jobs, trying to patch together a life, that's a lot of extra work that you have to do just to be able to scrape yourself out of a hole that you didn't even realize you were digging yourself into just trying to pay for your daily bills. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean, but maybe I want to circle back to being like, okay, does everybody, like when I was a kid and I first, was over 18, I never imagined being able to have my own apartment. Never even occurred to me. And like my first adult living situations, I wasn't shared a room with a dude. You know what I mean? Like I had to, I hate to say it, but pay my dues. I had to increase my human capital. I had to work the 2 jobs. I had to do stuff to be able to graduate to first originally having, my own room. That was my first level up. And then my next level up was getting my own studio apartment, as I recall. So it wasn't like, but I had to,
right. But if you've got a family of 4,
well, how do you end up with a family of 4? How do you end up with a family of 4 with no money? How do you do that?
The cost of living is through the roof. Choice? I mean, housing is half of like the average worker's pay at this point, 40%, 50%, somewhere in there.
Right.
And the cost of living has continued to go up. Wages aren't keeping up in pace with cost of living and inflation. 60% of American households can't withstand, a $400 or $500 expense. Like the precarity with which the average person lives, like I think it shows that there's a problem with the system and gaps in that safety net that let people through. And yeah, you may say it's marginal, but I think those marginal cases, they're still people. I think they still deserve a baseline standard of living, food, housing, a job if they can work it, that kind of stuff.
So like when they came up with the war on poverty in 1968, they wanted to figure out what was an acceptable level of poverty. And that's like, they had to study this shit.
Right.
Now, what they came up with is that as an adult single male, you should be able to afford a shared room at a rooming house that also provides 1 hot meal per day. Now, if we look at today, a couple problems. One, we made rooming houses illegal. So we already have figured this thing out, right? We figured it out. There was old ladies that ran rooming houses all across the country that provided affordable housing for individuals and stuff. We also shamed people for having children out of wedlock and creating families that could not be sustained. And we also, not to rag on the white folks per se, but
go ahead.
The Germanic folks are very much like my house, get out, you're 18 years old, where I see much more frequently in my culture, African-American culture and Latino culture, that we have intergenerational housing that prevents a lot of homeless type situations. So to a certain degree, it's a little bit about a false American dream that doesn't, necessarily pan out for everybody, or lots of people, they sell this as part of consumerism. See, like, although I'm a capitalist, I'm anti-consumerist. And I believe that we've poisoned ourselves a little bit with this consumerism crap where, you look on your phone, everybody's a baller, so you think you should be a baller too, and you don't understand why you can't afford renting an apartment. Well, motherfucker, you don't make enough money to have an apartment. You need to get with 3 or 4 friends and live communally. And that's, in fact, my wealth. I went from 0, raised by communists, to multiple millions. It didn't happen, because like I'm special per se. It happened because I made huge sacrifices to my lifestyle. I had my last roommate when I was 49 years old. Like, it's not something that you just get because you're born here. You got to earn it. And we do have systems in place for people that, look, I think 10% of our population can never afford to take care of themselves. They just don't have what it takes. If you were to look at a bell curve or whatever, you'd be like, these motherfuckers over here to the left are going to always need help. And It's our job as a society to help them.
Right.
Now, for me, my problem is we spend the money in Iran blowing up people and ruining the world economy. We have the money. Exactly. And we already have a progressive tax system. So now let me say
it's progressive. I'll give you
You're going to be mad, but let me say it. 20% of the people pay 80% of the taxes. So we're already doing it. You can look
at it. But it's
up.
the 20% that's reaping 80% of the benefits in society. So yeah, you're going to pay 80% of the taxes. Like, if we just want to make it an 80-20 thought experiment kind of thing, then yeah, if you take 80% of the benefits in, you should put 80% back into the system. Yes.
I don't understand. Okay, explain to me. I don't think you and I have that different of a lifestyle. So,
well, just a little bit about.
I'm just saying, and I've hung out with billionaires too. Like, the only difference between my lifestyle as a regular rich guy and like a billionaire is that they have more privacy. They get private planes. I just fly a regular plane with everybody else. They get private beaches. They get private chefs. I can order a chef and they'll deliver me my stuff frozen, but they got a chef to come in the house and cook it. There's really not that much. We use the same Netflix. They use the same phone as I do. Their car has leather seats. Mine has plastic seats.
Yeah,
but there's no
difference. And I'm riding around on a moped taking care of my octogenarian grandfather. So our lifestyles are materially different. But
I did that same thing. I took care of my 90-year-old. I took care. My grandmother lived with me until she was 14 years, till she was 96 years old. But that's what we all have to do that. We all have to figure out how to do that. And we all have to figure out ways to create the capital.
And what if you don't have what if you don't have a family that can provide you with that leg up? You don't have that infrastructure. You have zilch. And
you need other people. You're a human being. You need other people.
Okay.
You have to find your new family. You have to find people that have similar interests, that are all in the same boat. When I was a kid, we'd rent a 3-bedroom apartment and there'd be 6 to 8 of us living in there. Oh, yeah. And we would share. And we would share amongst each other because we were all poor, but we had heat, we had food, we ate rice and beans and shit. And every now and then we had enough money for a slice of pizza, and it was, a victory. But look, you got to live communally. If you have nothing, you have to find other people that have nothing and that want something. Because you can also find people that want to just get high all day and don't want to do nothing either. So you have that mix.
Now, I would say setting a system up wherein people have to scrape together and cobble together a lifestyle like that, when we have the material wealth to fight wars and offer, just huge giveaways, bailouts to various corporations and things like that. If we can afford to do those things, why can't we afford a higher baseline so that people don't have to fight and struggle so much? Wouldn't it be better for society for us to start higher and be able to expend that effort towards higher order problems instead of having to scrape together stuff?
Well, there's no question that we waste the majority of our money that we provide to the federal government is wasted. And it's wasted on a war policy, and it's wasted on paying interest on previous wars. So you're not going to find a disagreement with me. However, what I would say is that, so last year it was a decent year. I wrote a check to the federal government for $42,000. Now, in my opinion, those motherfuckers are the last people to spend that money if they want to affect good. I think they, maybe 10% of the money that we send them actually gets to do good shit.
Right.
So I would say if you left me with the money, I would have, built some tiny houses for people that I could rent out to them for $200 a month and be affordable or something. I think that I would do more good if the money was left in my hands. And maybe I'd be only intergenerationally and family altruistic. I wouldn't do that. I would say, oh, look, I got a cousin who's an artist. You know what? I'm going to pay for their rent for a year so that they can make art. That's how I would do it,
Right.
And I think that I would have a better job if you left me with the money instead of thinking the party or Comrade Trump is going to do a better
Comrade
job.
Trump. That is the most laughable thing I have.
I know that was a
good
joke.
Job. Good job pressing the button.
It was a good one. Come on. It was kind of funny.
Comrade, come on. It was funny because it's not even close to reality.
Or how about
he's much more like a Cheeto Mussolini. He's much more in line with a Mussolini than he is with a Comrade anybody.
Yeah, I would agree with you, except that Mussolini fought in World War I and was up in the Alps freezing his ass off shooting at Austrians.
Yeah,
whereas
so he at least has some grit. Trump dodges, sure.
Trump was at Studio 54 snorting coke and hanging with chicks. So I think Mussolini is kind of way
it probably
way
does
more respectable.
Well, I don't know how to respond to that in any way other than to laugh.
As you should,
a respectable Mussolini.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
man.
Look, he'll still end up, I mean, he's gonna cling to power as long as he has to avoid going to jail or prison.
Yeah.
And in reality is, this is the thing about Trump. This is my wife's theory, and I love it, is that Trump sat around the table with his mom, dad, grandmom, and they talked about politics, and everything that they said that the government did wrong during his lifetime between 1940 whatever to 1985, Trump to get on Mount Rushmore has to fix it. So he's gonna go and get the Panama Canal back. He's gonna go get Cuba back. He's gonna go and take over them Venezuelan oil fields. He don't give a fuck. So because he's a New York grandfather,
Well, and I think we're back to capitalist extraction over popular providing for people. I think we're back to that. No? I mean, if that's what he thinks success is, on a broad scale for America, is to go and do these imperial wars, grab a bunch of resources to benefit him and his capitalist buddies, then if that's what he sees as getting himself on Mount Rushmore, then that's the mindset of that sort of person, right? So you can see how that could lead from capitalism into fascism, no?
I mean, in a broad stroke, but anytime you have a bunch of scared people and you're able to create fear within a people, you're going to end up getting a guy like this, no matter what the underlying, society or market system or economic system is being used. I think the thing about Trump is he brilliantly got people to fear the other and to, I think that there was a brilliance in the strategy of saying, I think I can twist these people into panic and that only I, Trump, can solve these problems that everybody else created and that it's only I. So I don't know if I'm fully agreeing with you, but I think I'm agreeing with you.
We're on a similar line of thought in there. I think,
but I don't think it has to do with the capitalists because there's so few capitalists that
the property relations have nothing to do with with going in that direction versus, say,
Well, all
other
right.
direction?
On that level there, us capitalists do not want, you know, well, so for land, for example, that's already controlled by the people through taxation and owned through taxation in our country. So take that one off the thing.
So
You know,
land
most
reform just can't be done because there's eminent domain?
well, no, land, land rights, they go back a long ass time.
Yeah.
And people having certain rights to land, and people have fought over land for a long time, hence, Israel and Palestine and all the conquest of the Native Americans, blah, 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 blah. We can talk about this forever. But the way it is currently, right now, the way we have it now, you don't really own your land. You own the rights to use it,
Right.
but it's really owned by your local government, really owns it. I pay something like $38,000 a year in local taxes just for that. And if I don't pay it, they're going to come and take it, and then they're going to auction it off to the next guy. So do I really have land rights? And if I don't pay my federal taxes, they'll freeze my bank account and come take the money from me. So,
but what happens if the people that are renting from you, you get to take their assets, or they don't get rights to that land? So you have rights to the benefits of that land. Maybe not rights to it literally, but you have rights to the benefits.
Yeah. And the control of it. Yeah. I mean, I've evicted dozens of people, so you're absolutely right.
That sucks. That sucks.
It is what it is. It's sad. It is what it is. It had to happen.
But where did they end up? Where did they end up going?
They went into my homeless shelter, the one that
vertical integration.
The landlord of
vertical integration, the perfect.
Yeah, there you go. The perfect capitalist.
Can't afford this unit, we'll evict you,
and
you can go into the shelter.
But at the same time, like, dude, what's the difference between a homeless shelter and an apartment with 8 people living in it and 3 bedrooms? It's the same.
And I think we're limiting yourself to like that. Those options, I think, is part of the problem. I think we have enough land to build on. Like, there's unoccupied housing stock that gets used for short-term rentals and things like that. There are enough places that we could put people. Like, yeah, you might have to split a building. You get one room, somebody else gets another at some point. I got no problem with roommates. What I have a problem with is people freezing to death on the street. That's where I have the problem, Like, I'm not saying everybody needs that white picket fence, that 2.5 kids, the 1/4 acre backyard. I'm not saying everybody needs or even deserves that as a baseline, but like a roof over your head and the ability to know you're not going to die tomorrow. That seems like a fair starting point.
I understand what you're saying, but poverty is the human condition, period. Fair. Let's just be real. That we are still humansies, and we've been poor way longer than we've even had the idea to even think about prosperity. And so that is the human condition.
Doesn't always have to be.
Well, sort of, because some people are different. Just the same way we can look at Trump and we can both agree this motherfucker a little different.
Oh, yeah.
So, like he's a little fucked up. There's a lot of people that's like, dude, we have to throw you off the island. Even the roommate situation, I don't know about you, but I remember having to ban a couple roommates. Be like, listen, you got to go.
Yeah.
You done shat all over the toilet. You didn't clean up behind yourself 3-4 times. You ate my leftover Chinese food. Motherfucker, you got to go.
Right. Yeah. You don't fuck with man's kung pao.
Right. Especially my leftover shit that I'm coming home thinking about.
Thinking about all day and you get there. Yeah. But do we build a society on the bad roommate theory? Or do we build a society on a good roommate theory? That guy's good, so we should prop him up when he's having a bad time. Because he's been good to us these other times.
But we wish people could be altruistic like that, but they can't.
And if they can't,
and that's why collective farms fail. That's why these factories without managers under communist and socialist systems fail. It's like, you got to have someone who's like, listen,
not only do you have co-ops that do just fine.
What's that?
I know plenty of co-ops that do just fine. Like workplace democracy, it may not yield the highest profit, but it is an efficient means of production. They know what they need to produce. They know how to produce it. They know the job.
I mean, the most effective one I personally know of is the flour company.
Okay.
But I don't think I think it has a ceiling. I don't think those companies can grow. I think they have a ceiling.
And that's a capitalist mindset versus somebody who wants to, get what their labor puts into it and not take from somebody else. Like, yeah, I'm going to work X amount. I'm going to have, a decent standard of living because of that work, but it doesn't always have to be gross. Like, I think that mindset is part of what puts us in this situation where we have to choose between authoritarianism and wealth redistribution.
Wait.
I know.
Lord Jesus.
I said the word, didn't I?
Oh my Jesus. You and that redistribution shit just brings a chill into my heart. Terrible.
You're a good sport.
I'm having a great time. And I love being your interlocutor.
I think that's the right one.
I love having these conversations.
Me too, man.
But the real issue is, look, we don't get along as people well enough to pull that shit off. The other side is and this is going to really piss you off or annoy the shit out of you. So are you comfortable? Are you comfortable?
Absolutely.
There is nothing more socialist than the American public corporation.
I think as a joke that works perfectly.
No, but I will explain why.
I would love to hear an explanation.
Why. Sure. So I've been studying this a little bit. So I did a study of Walmart and the Home Depot, Walmart being the largest employer in the United States and the Home Depot. And I said, well, what do these motherfuckers do with these stock buybacks? So we know that they give a bunch to the C-suite. But then I looked into it and I remembered some shit that happened to me back in 1998. And I'm going to relate that story.
Okay.
So at Walmart, you can buy shares as an employee. You can buy shares of the company at a discounted rate right out of your check. And what they do is they buy this stock. Sure, they give a bunch to their C-suite people, but they also sell it to their employees. And the employees are allowed to buy it at a discounted rate. And then they get the dividends and all the other stuff. Now,
while they're on food stamps and Medicaid because they're not afforded a job with fair pay and health insurance.
You're looking at right. They're on food stamps or Medicaid. That person probably could have never got a job in doing anything. It was probably a favor to be like, yeah, you can stand here at the front and greet people. Like you're
people working in the stock.
It's not like
it's
all right. So I'm going to move to my next example, which is the Home Depot.
Okay.
So at the Home Depot, they have a really generous plan where they sell the stock at a 15% discount to their employees. Now, in 1998, I've been a landlord a really long time. So I've been a customer of the home. I'm what's called a pro desk customer, which means I don't go and hang out with the regular people. I go into this special area where there's free coffee and shit. You'd love it. You'd love it.
Free coffee for the people.
It's for the rich people. Don't worry. You don't want to go in there. But anyway, I'm in there and I'm doing my order, and then I see the managers are all huddling around, murmuring to each other. And then two of the motherfuckers take their aprons off. This is 1998. Throw it down and walk out the door. And then another manager picks up the microphone across the store and says, due to some unforeseen circumstances and some shortages in people, we're only going to be running 2 registers, and there may be delays in getting out deliveries and stuff. And I'm like, what the fuck just happened? And they're like, oh, the Home Depot stock just split. And so half the managers just walked out and retired en masse. And so our store is all fucked up for the next couple of days because there's 6 millionaires that just quit the job because they've been buying Home Depot stock out their checks for the last 20 years.
Right. They bought it out of their check. It wasn't afforded to them as they weren't part of the company built in.
They got to earn it. It was at a discount.
Did they not earn that doing their damn job?
Yeah, they did it. And they got a discount. And they were able to get ownership
somehow. The right discounted rate on shares of a private corporation is somehow socialism to you?
the fact that I can buy into it absolutely is. When
Ah,
I was a
man,
kid,
that's
when I was a
happening,
kid,
for
for me to
sure.
buy stocks in publicly traded company, I had to go downtown. I had to find a stockbroker. I had to give them what seemed to be an outrageous amount of money just to even start buying the
Right.
shares.
I'm not saying
And
it's
then
a
here it
necessarily
is,
bad program
and
on
here it is.
balance.
I'm working for this corporation that is allowing me to become an owner of the means of production at a discounted rate because I work there is a
That
socialist thing.
it is fundamentally not a socialist thing because
Yeah,
it
it
still
is.
has a privatized means of production.
No, it's not. It's a public corporation. It's owned by the
It's
people that
not.
own it.
Yes, by the people that own it, not by society.
And but you can buy it as a member of society. You
Can
can go
if I
buy it
have the
for
means and the
$12.
resources. But then
Well,
we're
then get
back
the
to
means and the resources, or work
and
there, and then you could buy it at a discount.
right, but we're
You
still
just think
within a
you just think
capitalist
because you're
system.
alive, you should own the means of production. I'm
No,
alive,
no,
so give me
that's
the
not what
means
I'm
of
saying.
production.
That's not what I'm
No,
saying.
you
What
got
I'm
to go
saying
and
is
earn it.
society should be able
What?
to dictate what is done with the resources and prosperity of society, that we all participate in society. Things should be to the benefit of all people and not to someone's individual profit margins.
But why not go and work there and earn it?
I'm not saying you can't do that or shouldn't do that. What I'm saying is
You're
the
saying you shouldn't.
fundamentals of the system should
But
not be
you're
such that it gatekeeps out people that don't have the means in the first place. The reality
well, I
is
just
people
told you
can't
the mean
always
is you walk
scrape,
in the door
but
and you
it's not
sign in and you
realistic to
say, I'm
expect
going to work
everyone to be able
here,
to
and
scrape
now
their
you
way
have
up
the
to the
means.
top. It's just not realistic to be able to say that everyone has the ability to do that. Otherwise, why wouldn't they have?
Well, I agree. 15% of the population of the United States does not have the ability to get a job, hold a job, or do a job. I agree. And I agree that those people are going to need support and help from larger society. I agree with that.
Right.
But the other 85% of you motherfuckers can go out there and get a job. And then you can go and earn yourself a piece of the means of production. But I agree, 15% of the people, they ain't going to make it. I got cousins dumb as shit. I got cousins that can't even
It's not a
pick
dumb
up
or
the
smart
phone.
thing, man. Like there's
Are you
so many
sure?
more new. I mean, on a certain level, there is some of that at play, but that whole 15% does not account for just being dumb. It just doesn't. Like,
Well, we could. Well, if we looked at our population and said we have a 15% poverty rate, and then if you looked at our population and you said how much of the population has an IQ below 80, what's the answer?
I don't keep track of
15%.
IQ.
Yes,
I don't keep
it.
track of IQ, but
15%.
I guarantee not everybody in that IQ cadre that you're trying to point out, I'm sure some of them are sitting in the C-suite doing dumb shit behind a computer.
No.
You don't think
Definitely
there are
not.
some idiots that have ascended to power?
I think there's some people with 100 IQ and above that have ascended to power, which is average and above. I do not think there is anyone with below 90 IQ that is in a real position of power. Now, you might see it in some private businesses where, like, it's Johnny's garage and they got 5 employees and Johnny's dad died. Now, Johnny owns a company and he's not quite with it, but they probably put all sorts of systems in place where even Johnny couldn't fuck it up too bad, or Johnny fucks it up and it rolls into the ground. It could happen. Let me grab my coffee. I'm sorry.
Oh, grab it. Well, man, like, it's a good conversation. We fundamentally disagree on how society should be organized.
Well, I mean, I would love to see a more egalitarian society, but it's impossible. So I'm not even gonna.
Impossible.
Why would I waste my time?
Why would you limit your thinking like that?
Because I've lived in the real world. I've seen these motherfuckers. You can't take care of all these people. You can't. Some of these people have mental illnesses, crises. Some of these people are just like narcissistic. You just can't. Those
narcissists end up in the C-suite, man. What does running a corporation or being a politician select for? Narcissistic traits.
Well, I would definitely agree on the politician side. Running a corporation is a bitch. It's a shitty job.
I'm not saying it's not.
I mean, it sucks. Like to get me to
you got a lot
incorporate-
depending on you. Yeah, I get that. But that also comes with the territory.
Yeah, I mean, if you asked for that and that's what you wanted to do, then you asked for it, period, you know. But,
Right.
you know,
And so
for me, I know, you know, just watching how hard deans and college vice presidents have it. And I've hung out with a lot of people that have owned very large corporations. It sucks. Like to a certain degree, you're just doing it until you can stop, you know,
Right.
and that's really what it
Well,
is.
that's what any
I mean,
worker's doing,
some
right?
people do get addicted to the accumulation part. I mean, there's definitely accumulation addiction. I had it for a while. I have to admit it. I was.
What got you out of it? Because that I'm very curious about how you got out of that. Maybe we'll save that for another day.
Well, we could talk all. You know, we should talk like once every couple of weeks or something.
Absolutely. I got to go mow a lawn here in a couple minutes, but
no problem.
We want to wrap up. Any last words you want to leave with the people?
Yeah, no, just D, I enjoy your channel. I appreciate anti-fascists. I'm the guy that would be there passing out donuts and shit while y'all run up to the front. I'm not going with you or nothing, but I appreciate what y'all do. You know, anyone that'll go kick a Nazis in the nuts, I'm all for it. But I really want to talk about this stuff because I want you to live a great life. I want you to live a prosperous life. And it's my opinion that it's not effective to bitch about a world that you can't change. It's better to learn a system and prosper within it by living communally and working communally with people of a like mind. But having said that, Dee, thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to be on.
Thanks for coming on. I just want to say thank you for listening to everything I had to say, rebutting the parts you disagreed with, admitting the points where we were in agreement. I find a little more common ground with libertarian types, just being kind of on the libertarian socialist end of things. I find it's a lot easier to discuss problems of authoritarianism with people that identify that as a problem. So,
yeah, I mean,
Robert, thank you so much. It's been great. Really
thank you, brother. You have a great one.
Thanks maybe do it again in a couple weeks, 2 Mondays out.
Absolutely. I'm always available to hang out with you and talk about capital.
All right, man. Take it easy.
I'll see you, brother. Bye-bye.
Yep.
I don't know how to turn this off. I don't know how to turn it off.
I got it.